Hi, my name is Brendan Williams. I'm a research fellow at the Centre for Integrative Neuroscience and Neurodynamics at the University of Reading, and in this presentation today I'll be giving an overview of our contribution to the quality control procedures for fMRI project, looking specifically at the inter-rater reliability of quality control assessments. To start off this presentation, I'll give a brief overview of what quality control is. Quality control procedures are used in the field of human neuroimaging as post-acquisition checks to determine whether the collected data is of sufficient quality for subsequent processing and analysis. There are many potential sources of noise in fMRI data that can arise during acquisition, and because signal typically has relatively no signal-to-noise ratio, it is important to make sure data are of sufficient quality to prevent spurious results that either mask or amplify an effect of interest. However, because fMRI data are large and multidimensional, the manual checking of data can quickly become intractable. Therefore, to address this problem, several tools have been developed which support quality control decision-making. These tools include MRI-QC, Visual QC, and fMRI-QC, which we have developed at Reading. These tools aim to reduce the burden of manual screening by creating informative data visualizations and quality metrics that summarize a dataset and help to make more informed decisions about data quality control. However, these tools still often require users to make decisions about whether to include a dataset or not based on the metrics they calculate, and this process of decision-making could potentially lead to differences in opinion between prospective raters. To highlight this issue, our submission to the Quality Control Procedures project aimed to assess the reliability of decision-making of multiple raters using data from the project. The Quality Control Procedures in fMRI project aim to showcase and highlight examples of quality control practices from across different institutions and tools, with the aim of fostering discussion within the field about issues relating to data quality. As part of the project, contributors were invited to describe their quality control methods in detail and to provide examples showing them in action for a variety of datasets acquired using multiple different scanners and sites. These datasets included task-based and resting state functional scans alongside T1-weighted anatomical scans. In total, the Quality Control Procedures project included data from 159 subjects split across resting state and task-based fMRI data. These data were acquired from datasets which included ABIDE 1 and 2, the Functional Connectome project, and several datasets from the Open Neuro repository. For our contribution to the quality control procedures in fMRI project, we use the software fMRI-QC. fMRI-QC is a Python-based tool for checking the quality of functional magnetic resonance imaging data. It produces a range of output files which can be used to identify fMRI data quality issues, which include several types of artifacts, motion issues, signal loss, and poor signal-to-noise ratio, among other issues. fMRI-QC makes the quality control process straightforward by providing a HTML report with 2D summary images alongside 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional Nifty files that can be used for a more in-depth quality control checking. This software was developed by us as staff at the Centre for Integrative Neuroscience and Neurodynamics to be a user-friendly and straightforward quality control assessment tool. fMRI-QC is available fully open source and can be downloaded from GitHub. Quality control can be performed either using a graphical interface or through batch scripting. To assess the inter-rater reliability of quality control decision-making using fMRI-QC, we had 4 raters who are pictured on screen review quality control reports produced by fMRI-QC for datasets from the Quality Control Procedures in fMRI project for task-based and resting state functional data. Raters also performed quality assessment of T1-weighted anatomical data for the subjects associated with the fMRI data. All 4 raters were postdoctoral research fellows who all had previous experience in quality assessment, processing and analysis of functional neuroimaging data. 2 raters had previously used fMRI-QC to perform quality assessment of fMRI data. Raters followed a pre-prepared quality assessment protocol and used 3 subjects as calibration prior to starting quality control to ensure all raters understood how to interpret items in the protocol. As part of the quality control procedure, each rater reviewed data for 104 of 129 subjects from the quality control procedures in fMRI project dataset. Subjects from the dataset were assigned to ensure that at least 4 subjects from each site in the full dataset were reviewed by all 4 raters, and every other subject in the dataset was reviewed by 3 raters. Assignments of subjects to raters was also balanced so that the proportion of overlapping cases was equal across all raters. Wrapper scripts were produced, which were used to automate data processing, curation, and quality control using fMRI QC, and also produce a supplementary output to provide additional information about image metadata. To interpret these output, raters were provided with a quality control protocol which included both qualitative and quantitative criteria for determining whether data had sufficient quality or not. For motion, we set quantitative thresholds for absolute and relative motion, as well as qualitative checks for quality control issues that were driven either by subthreshold motion or residual motion artifacts that were not corrected by the realignment of the functional time series. We also set thresholds for slice-wise temporal signal-to-noise ratio and included criteria to check for field of view, the number of volumes, and to confirm that all scans were present in the dataset to check for any potential acquisition issues. T1 weighted and functional data also needed to have whole brain coverage, which included the cerebral cortex and subcortical brain regions, but did not have to include the cerebellum. Several other qualitative assessment measures were defined based on plots generated by fMRI QC and are described in detail in our manuscript. Raters reviewed and classified subjects as include if there are no quality assessment issues, such as a failure of one of our quantitative and qualitative criteria. They also rated cases as uncertain if there were some quality issues that made the dataset marginal, but no failure on quantitative criteria. And lastly, participants were rated as excluded by raters if there was evidence of failure to meet our quantitative or qualitative assessment criteria. If cases were rated as either uncertain or exclude by raters, then they also provided additional information to explain their assignment of the subject to either the uncertain or exclude classification. We then assess the reliability of raters' classifications of subjects to either the include, uncertain, or exclude categories, using Fliss's kappa to provide a pairwise and category-wise inter-rater reliability coefficient between raters. We also calculated agreement using percentage for pairwise comparisons and calculated Krippendorff's alpha to calculate an overall agreement across all raters for all categories. This latter method was particularly appropriate as it enabled us to properly account for missing values that existed within the nature of our quality control assessment assignment protocol. Assessing the reliability of raters' assignments of subjects to the include, uncertain, and exclude categories using percentage agreement showed that overall agreement between raters was good, and the pairwise percentage agreement between raters ranged from 75 to 84%. The number of subjects classified as include by raters ranged from 68 to 80 subjects. For the uncertain category, this range was 3 to 12 subjects across raters, and for the exclude category, the number of subjects assigned to this category ranged from 19 to 26 subjects. Using Fliss's kappa to calculate category-wise agreement, we found overall that raters showed moderate agreement for the assignment of subjects to the include category and substantial agreement for the assignment of subjects to the exclude category, and this result was statistically significant for both categories. However, overall we only observed slight agreement between raters for the assignment of subjects to the uncertain category, and pairwise we found that 2 pairs of raters had negative coefficients indicating that there was no agreement in their assignment of subjects to the uncertain category, while a further 3 pairs of raters had coefficients that were close to 0. The lack of reliability between raters for the uncertain classification appeared to be driven by the assignment of a subject to this category by just a single rater. For instance, of the 27 subjects that were rated as uncertain by any rater, 21 of these subjects were rated as uncertain by only a single rater, and of these 21 subjects that were rated as uncertain by a single rater, 20 of the 21 subjects had complete agreement with the other raters in the assignment to either the include or exclude category. The remaining 6 subjects where more than one rater classified a subject as uncertain, for both of these cases, there were issues that related to either motion or potential pathology. We also measured overall agreement and reliability using Krippendorff's alpha, which provides evidence to tentatively accept that classifications were reliable when assessing include and exclude cases. However, when we added the uncertain cases to our Krippendorff's alpha calculation, this was no longer the case. Interestingly, despite raters showing substantial agreement for use of the exclude category, when we reviewed the notes provided by raters for exclude decisions, motion was the only classification consistently used by all raters for a given subject to exclude them. Other issues, such as aliasing, global signal, and signal-to-noise ratio were identified by the majority of raters. However, there were an even greater number of artifacts identified by only a single rater when deciding to exclude a subject. However, one caveat worth mentioning about this is that these categories were not necessarily mutually exclusive, and 2 raters could both exclude the same subject. However, one rater may have only reported motion issues when excluding the participant, while another rater could have reported multiple issues and reasons for excluding the subject. Overall, our results indicate that the reliability of raters' assignments for the include and exclude categories was good, with kappa coefficient values ranging from moderate to substantial agreement. However, coefficients for the uncertain classification demonstrated that there was little reliability between raters, which was below chance level for all but one pair of raters. Furthermore, we found that in all but one case, where only one rater had used the uncertain classification, that the remaining raters had agreed with the assignment of that subject to either the include or the exclude category. However, given this, it is worth noting that all 4 raters in this procedure had fMRI data quality assessment and analysis experience, and therefore agreement between raters may vary as a function of experience and career stage, meaning that greater attention may need to be paired with quality control procedures if users are more inexperienced with either the tool or fMRI data in general. To summarize, we advise putting together a quality control protocol that ensures your quality control decision-making is as reliable as it can possibly be. To do this, we recommend writing a detailed protocol before reviewing your data. One way that you can get started with this is by using the papers from the Quality Control Procedures in fMRI project and identifying commonly identified issues and then determining thresholds which you can use for these parameters. When determining thresholds, we recommend that you be mindful of your population of interest and any specific needs they may have. For instance, if you are working with young children, then you may wish to have a more lenient motion threshold than if you are working with healthy young adults. Secondly, if you are performing data quality control yourself, then we would recommend re-reviewing a subset of your data to confirm whether data quality interpretation is consistent over time, and potentially reassigning subjects where appropriate upon review. We also recommend speaking to colleagues about edge cases. In this presentation, while we were able to use the uncertain category for some subjects, in your own data assessment protocol, you will likely want to know whether this subject will or will not be included in your analysis. In this case where decision is marginal, then we recommend seeking the advice of other colleagues to help make the decision, particularly if they may have further experience in the quality control of fMRI data. Furthermore, in these cases where you may be uncertain about whether or not to include a subject, then we would recommend a deeper dive into the functional data, viewing both the raw and pre-processed functional data set and time series to determine whether the issues that have been identified during quality control can be minimized through data processing. Lastly, if you're using MRI-QC for your quality control, then we would recommend looking at a tool called MRI-Qception for supporting your decision making. MRI-Qception is a tool that uses data from the MRI-QC web API to plot your image quality metrics in the context of other image quality metrics that have been submitted to the MRI-QC web API dataset, which includes hundreds of thousands of reference values for the individual image quality metrics that are calculated by MRI-QC. And lastly, as a final cautionary note, although our quality control protocol resulted in high agreement between raters for include and exclude decisions, when our group majority rating were compared to other submissions from the Quality Control Procedures project, we still saw a high heterogeneity in how the data was assessed. This difference is based on a number of different features, including when data are assessed and the processing steps for the data, what aspects of the data were or were not assessed, such as timing files, and differences in acceptable thresholds between groups for issues such as motion or signal loss. Lastly, overall objectives regarding prospective data may have differed between groups, which should further influence decision-making and ultimately leads to this large heterogeneity which we see between the different projects when assessing the same data.